Happy holidays, everyone, and welcome back once again to the Five Nights at Wario's Retrospective Series. Earlier this year, I went over the entry that was a prequel to the entire series that I ultimately had mixed opinions on. Today, though, I'm looking at the fifth game in the series, which is ironically called Five Nights at Wario's 4. Today's video also marks the conclusion to the classic era of FNAW, as the fourth game was the last game for a long time until we eventually got more in 2020. I will be honest though, I don't think I've been super clear on what my goal was for this series when I initially started, which has led to a bit of confusion on what exactly I was covering. Was it just the original games, or was it everything? Not to mention, with how long wait times are between each video in this series, yeah, I can definitely see why some people are antsy. Because of this, I've added a chapter explaining my initial plan specifically for this video, meaning it will not be included in the eventual supercut. If you want to hear the explanation, if you were ever curious, keep watching, but for those who don't care and just want to see me cover FNAF 4, then skip to the release chapter. Are we all good? Right, then let's begin. I think the best way to start this chapter would be to first explain my inspiration for making this series in the first place. Five Nights at Wario's is one thing, but the format and name Retrospective Series was inspired by Hawk's FNAF videos. He's technically not the only one, because a few years ago, I began to notice dozens of retrospectives appearing all over YouTube, which could range from normal kinds of reviews to full-blown video essays doing deep dives on certain media that span multiple hours. I love these kinds of videos, and I still do. Getting to learn the history of these things while the film, book, or game is just completely dissected. They will always be fun and intriguing videos that I can sit down with a snack and enjoy, or be doing another activity while I have it going on in the background, because I weirdly prefer to listen to that kind of content over something like a podcast. Back to FNAF though. Segen, of course, wasn't the first one to do this. Tons of people have released super long deep dives about the FNAF series. Hell, some people have done complete series reviews on fan games like Candies, Flumpties, Sonics, The Return to Freddy's, you name it. But strangely, Five Nights at Wario's never seemed to be the topic of one of these videos. With it being one of the first FNAF fan games to kinda go viral, you'd think people would talk about the entire series and its history by this point. Of course, if they did, this video and series wouldn't exist. I found a couple of videos talking about Wario's over time, but most of them came out after my first video. Before that, we had Ellis Mark's FNAF fan game video, if that even counts. Not that it did much to help this game's reputation. And because of this, I pulled a Thanos.
Fine. I'll do it myself.
As a longtime fan of the games, I wanted to do them justice if no one else was. And I wasn't alone in that thought. A lot of the community, even to this day, are hoping these games get some more recognition, considering other fan games got that treatment, and most of the series, especially these days, has a lot to talk about. So, that's what I set out to do, and the plan began in summer of 2022. I wanted to do this so bad that I even made thumbnails before anything else started production. Granted, most of them were thrown out for different designs. Though the only one that technically still exists is the first video's thumbnail, but even then I did technically redo that one a bit. I do wish I still had those old ones to show though. Later on, I rewatched a few other retrospective-esque videos, including Hawk's, to figure out their overall structure. Remember, at the time, I was only doing generic-ass gaming videos that had no scripting and no high-quality editing. I stepped out of my comfort zone with that first video, and for the most part, it's still fine enough. What I never did, though, is explain what I'll be doing now. The actual roadmap/plan. When I first started thinking up this series, I wanted to structure it like Hawk's did, covering every game and every version of the game. Knowing the FNAW series has an expansive 2.0/5.0 update that change and add a lot from the original 1.0s, I figured it would be best to start out small and gradually work towards the bigger stuff in the series. I also didn't want the older versions to be entirely forgotten. Whether they're considered yesterday's news or not, they made most of us fans of the series in the first place. Though I also felt I had to pay respect to the 1.0s since I definitely knew no one else would in that regard. This also meant working with the restraints the original ones had. This meant no custom nights, no pill recharge, daytime quest, or 2018 mode. This is also why it seemed like I was ignoring the updates. And that's kind of where the confusion started. People more familiar with the newer stuff might not know that stuff wasn't present in the 1.0, or people could be puzzled on why I'm covering outdated versions of the games. Again, as I said before, I wanted to cover everything. Cover the entire history of the series, giving it respect, even if it meant double dipping, not to mention with inferior versions. Now obviously, I think this all could have been avoided if I just told people my roadmap from day one. I went in thinking everyone was a mind reader, when in actuality, I just confused a lot of people. And I hope this explanation helped bring an end to any confusion any of y'all had about how exactly I was structuring this series. And thank you if you listened all the way through on what was essentially a mini behind-the-scenes look at these videos. Maybe in the future, if you guys want, I can do a full-on commentary track when the series is over. Anyways, I think it's time to properly begin this retrospective with the tried and true build-up to release for FNAW 4. The release chapter this time around is one of the most significant ones because of some drama in a cancelled game. What are they? Well, if you've been in the community, you obviously know, but for those unaware, sit tight because this will get interesting. Let's start with the cancelled game first. That being Five Nights at Wario's Remastered. So after Origins, the series was seemingly all wrapped up. We saw the beginning and end of the story, so naturally, what can you really do with it without tarnishing the conclusion? That's what Andy was thinking too. He stated in a now deleted tweet that he has the urge to make a new FNAW game, but at the same time doesn't. But a user by the name of the 64th Gamer contacted Andy in September of 2015 about remaking the first game. Now honestly, that does make the most sense. What was the one thing each game was criticized for? Correct. So, going back and giving them a complete makeover can actually change people's perception of the series. Though, here's where the cracks start forming. 64th Gamer actually intended this to not be a simple remaster, but a canon game within the original continuity taking place before Origins. Apparently, this was because of a discovery in flawed time travel logic, and that the timeline would have been changed by Rosalina sending them back in time? Okay, well, it's not like that's wrong, as it is one form of time travel. Thing is, the Ouroboros and Bootstrap paradox also exist within stories. One example I can think of is the Marvel Zombies story. It's eventually revealed that the hunger virus that turns them all into zombies has no real origin, because it came from an alternate universe sentry that was sent to the past of Earth 2149. The Watcher deliberately did this so that the virus would be contained in a never-ending loop. And I feel like the FNAW story could have taken inspiration from this and not ever reveal the true origin of the cursed souls. They could just be a byproduct of the Bootstrap paradox. But instead, Andy and 64 opted for an expanded explanation that apparently would have also had Luigi be the cause for all this, along with him sporting this odd green puppet mask look. Dementio would have also starred in this game because I guess they realized the concept of the multiverse was subtly canonized in Origins. On topic with designs, Mario's kind of looked like ass. The white eyes were definitely a much better design for him because these big blue human-like eyes make him look really goofy. Honestly, that's the true legacy this game will always have. Visually, it looked pretty bad. I know, coming from the series that used Google Images for graphics, and I'm claiming 3D modeled environments are worse, well, these ones at least are. I'm not one of those people who never want to see a FNAW game with 3D visuals, but this game surely didn't help that vision. It all looks amateurish, obviously, so it's also not atmospheric nor eerie. The Google Images have a bit of charm to them where you're seeing these eerie locations that technically exist or existed in real life. It kind of taps into the vibes of liminal spaces and autophobia. I'll also be discussing that more later on. The remastered visuals, by comparison, are just kind of soulless and bland. Hopefully someday, a diehard FNAW fan with plenty of Blender experience will grace us with a fan game that has visually impressive 3D environments. So yeah, with poor reactions to the remaster, that definitely wasn't helped by a game-breaking bug found within the game, plus 64 and Andy were just getting too busy to actually work on the game, it was shelved. And we can all agree, it was for the better. Okay, with that whole debacle out of the way, let's get back on track with FNAW 4, since Andy decided to make that instead of the remaster. For starters, let's go over where the concept of this game was thought up. Andy has stated that he wanted to focus on nailing the atmosphere, probably because the last attempt didn't go so well. He wanted to make players feel uneasy by making them feel as if they knew these locations, like they'd been there when they were bright, colorful, and lively, and now they're drab, devoid of life, and downright unsettling. And we got a taste of what this setting entails on May 15th, 2016, when the first teaser trailer dropped. The game is shown to take place entirely on a TV screen. Channels showcasing a forest, news broadcasts, and a random room with a gurney can be spotted before Wario stops by for a hello. We then see the game's title screen with a beautiful rendition of the series' theme song before the trailer ends. This teaser alone could probably get someone invested. It looked like something no one had ever seen before in a FNAF game, flipping between television channels to avoid the threats. One thing that still has yet to be answered was the exact plot. Considering Andy stated he wanted to make this just for fun and nothing thus far was tying into the overall story, many probably figured this was a non-canon and/or side story that didn't matter too much. Jumping ahead about a week, beta footage was showcased on Toonster's channel. Nowadays, there's nothing really to note about this footage, since there doesn't seem to be really any differences between this and the final game. We did get to see what happens when the remote runs out of power, turning the TV off automatically, and getting a quick death. I kinda like that addition. It makes the dread seep in a lot more when there's no more visuals and you sit there quietly just waiting what happens next. That's the kind of mechanic that can get you killed in a FNAF fan game challenge. Twice.
Hey, I heard that. At least I have good sensibility when it comes to pizza. What the?
Huh. Make that thrice. In June, we got even more sneak peeks from various creators like Ajirajo and of course, Luigi Kid. And funnily enough, he was actually supposed to play the phone guy in the remaster before obviously that got canned. But this just meant we were getting closer and closer to the big day, when we get to play this ambitious game for ourselves. Now while all this is good and dandy, behind the scenes, it was a different story. Internal development wasn't the issue per se, just some internet drama that eventually caused development issues. Technically, this all kicked off the month prior, but who cares, this makes more sense to talk about now. So, I made light of it in the first video that the FNAF community kind of treated these games like a big joke.
Maybe if they get to your room, they come and apologize for how crappy this is.
No one really took them seriously, all because of the graphics. This definitely reached a boiling point during this game's development because T-Jock and Rachel's creator Nixon decided to share his thoughts about these games. Now honestly, I still have no clue where he said this at. Most I've heard is that he said this all on a live stream, but that must be lost media now because I still have no clue where to find it. But regardless, Nixon had talked shit about the series and thought it was one of those crappy troll games with very little effort put in. Andy eventually heard it from someone or somewhere and subsequently lost faith in FNAF 4. You can see in this GameJolt post that there's a lot of doubt about how the game will actually turn out. And it makes me feel so bad for him. Unfortunately, it did get worse because Andy eventually made an announcement that he would be putting the game on indefinite hold due to the Nixon drama. Fortunately though, what happened next was nothing short of an internet miracle. Tons of fans came out in support of Andy and the series with the hashtag #SupportAndy. It's nice seeing people stand up for the series and hush away any unwarranted hate. Something else fortunate happened too, though. Nixon left a comment himself, apologizing for what he said and asking Andy to not cancel the game over him. I'll give Nixon credit for that. He took accountability for the hate and wasn't stubborn in sticking to his guns about the snide comments he made. Andy eventually came around to all this support because he uncanceled the game and it was back on the menu. You'd feel like all this would be a cautionary tale of sorts, but surprisingly, no. FNAW would not be shy of fanverse developers talking shit yet again. Because more recently, Kane Carter of Pop Goes fame made a tweet poking fun at, what else? The graphics, and implying people are kind of dumb for liking the style. It all spawned because he apparently heard someone praising the graphics for FNAW 3, which, okay, fair enough. I myself wouldn't go as far as to praise the graphics of that game. Overall, they get better over time, but especially in the older ones, the visuals look pretty rough. People were understandably taken aback by the tweet because it was generally unprovoked. He just randomly decided to shit on the series because someone had a differing opinion on the visuals. I'm pretty sure he's still disliked by the FNAW community to this day, all because of that one tweet. I can't blame them though. Kane has had a history of getting into hot water for tweeting kind of aggressive things, plus not even doing research on certain topics. To me, it's important to think about what you say in real life and digitally. Kane definitely does not. At least when it comes to Twitter, and as such gets into these situations a lot. You shouldn't feel a need to censor yourself, of course, but always try to share your thoughts in a less aggressive and toxic way. Anywho, moving past drama, development picked back up, and on June 26, 2016, Five Nights at Wario's 4 was released. And ironically enough, Pop Goes also released that very same day. With all this pre-release stuff settled, let's finally dive in to the gameplay. Holy guacamole. If you thought the last two games shook up things with the FNAF formula, then check this shit out. This time around, the game takes place entirely on a TV screen, with the only line of defense being this dinky remote. Well, I guess that's not entirely true, but you'll know what I mean when I get to the characters. Speaking of which, Wario's main gimmick in this game is that he slowly invades the TV channels throughout the night. Each night, he will invade at a faster rate. Turning the TV off or playing the radio also speeds up his invasion. Once he has appeared in a channel, simply turning the brightness down for a few seconds will get rid of him. Failing to do so, or letting him invade said channel, will result in your death. Surprise, surprise, Mario isn't our very last character for once. He also works a bit differently than he used to, which is a breath of fresh air. He no longer acts just like Golden Freddy, yet he doesn't have his music box anymore. I do think that is a shame, because especially in Origins, his music box sounded really eerie. Anyways, night 2 onwards, Mario will slowly get closer to you. The only way to tell what stage he's in is either by turning the brightness down or turning the TV off. If you see him, simply turning the radio on for a few seconds will get rid of him. I will say he wasn't much of an issue throughout the entire game, which is a little weird because I feel like everyone else was actually pretty active on the later nights. But the radio itself actually has 3 different songs. One is classic piano, one is something that sounds straight out of SpongeBob, and the last one is... God damn it, I forgot how many Flumpties references there were in these games. Luigi is our next guy, and he's one of the simpler threats to deal with. He'll randomly pop up on your screen from night 3 onwards, complete with a little stinger noise. And all you need to do is switch to the next channel. I will say, he tends to startle me every time he appears, because I can never predict when he's coming. I'm not the only one though, because he can cause others to do stuff like this.
Oh my god! He scared me so bad I closed the game!
One of 2 characters introduced on night 4, while Luigi is just as simple as Luigi. Occasionally, he will appear on a few of the channels, and all you need to do is switch to the other one to avoid him. However, he is definitely dangerous when paired with a certain something that happens to the remote. I'll discuss why shortly. The second and last character introduced on Night 4, Peach is stopped in a very unique way. Night 4 also happens to introduce something called the menu bar, which has 4 different commands on it. The only one to worry about right now is cut rope. When you see her hanging in various different channels, cut her rope and she will be dealt with. Alternatively, you can also just switch channels, which is a little lame since it takes away from her having her own mechanic a bit. This bad boy lets you do a lot of things. You can switch between channels in either direction, turn the brightness down, play the radio, click these other buttons that don't do anything, or turn the TV off to recharge the battery. Yeah, so this remote is similar to the flashlight in Origins, where it has the worst battery life ever. Of course, like I showcased earlier, running out of battery will result in the TV turning itself off, where you just await the sweet release of death. Later on, the remote can occasionally break, causing you to have to fix it in the menu bar. This is the deadly combo Waluigi and, heck, even Luigi are paired with. If it breaks right when they show up, be ready to fix that shit. This doesn't show up until Night 4, and what it does is allow you to cut Peach's rope, fix the remote, stop Demon W, and... wonder what those mean. Okay, with the mechanics out of the way, let's talk about how good or bad the overall gameplay loop is. I've heard opinions on how this game is kinda boring, and some might just skip this entry due to that. Now personally, that's just crazy talk to me. I get it though. Night 1 and 2 are definitely slow and aren't super interesting, but honestly, what FNAF game doesn't have a boring first couple of nights? This game, by Night 4, truly gets pretty good. Luigi popping up randomly, which could put mud in your pants, Waluigi running straight at you in the hallway, Peach hanging in the TV channels, which she's very discreet in the graveyard. I pretty much miss her half the time and I just get lucky. All the while, Wario invades channels much faster and takes a while to get rid of. Trust me, by Night 5, it can be a struggle to beat, especially when one more character is added to the fray, which I'll talk about later. But I'm telling you, Waluigi and the remote breaking is a dangerous combo. But really, people are missing out on one of the things that truly elevates this game for me. The ambiance. This game uses its environments and audio to its advantage. I don't typically talk about that stuff with these games, because usually it's nothing to write home about. But even while still using Google Images, these locales can be kind of unsettling to stare at for a long period of time. Especially when you have to spot Wario peeking out. He's kind of like Springtrap with how hidden he can be sometimes. He's never right in front of your face aside from one instance. Like I mentioned earlier, it feels like Andy really tapped into autophobia in liminal spaces with this game. Images like the school hallway, the lone hospital gurney, or the cooking with Emma kitchen just give you this strange feeling. And it makes them even more crude when Wario and Waluigi stick their ugly noses there. I really like the audio too. The distant church bells ringing at random times in the night, the low-sounding laughter that sounds very sinister, and my personal favorite, the organ that can also randomly play, which gives me chills every time. I guess while on topic of audio, the jump scare noise is also one of the best in the series. Same goes for the animation too. It's just overall the best the jump scares have ever been, I'd say. Now unfortunately, this game doesn't really have any Easter eggs or secrets to discover like in the previous entries. The closest there is the damn Flumpties cover on the radio. Fortunately, finding secrets essentially was turned into a full-on side mode. What is it? Well, let's move on to the next chapter to figure that out. Now, much like how the trailers presented it, this game starts off with no real connections to the previous installments. In fact, for most of the game, it stays that way. Regardless, we first get this nifty tip about the news channel, then we truly begin by staring up at this vent and closing our eyes. We are soon greeted by this peculiar TV that the camera zooms into. Only then do we begin the gameplay. Right off the bat, this shows us why this isn't really a continuation of the story. It's because this is all one big dream, or more appropriately, a nightmare. The newscaster doesn't provide much story either. He is played by Jericho, one of the beta testers I previously mentioned. It's not until Night 3 where one of the best sequences plays out. It starts off like normal, just Jericho giving us the latest scoop, this time about NASA going to Mars. Then, this happens.
Anna K. Smithers explains how the astronaut suit will work and how the...
Weird, right? The game just completely crashed after that. Well, booting it back up, this happens. After that, the night properly begins. Not until we hear the news report, where this time the tone is completely different.
Catastrophe. I saw him. I saw them. We can't do anything about it. 14 people dead. They're everywhere. New ones keep coming. They all... You must just hide when you see them. Get away. Somehow switch channels, turn off the TV, anything very quickly. Darkness doesn't scare these ones. Normal darkness won't work. It won't work. We're dead. We're over.
The next news report on night 4 takes on this very same frantic tone.
They're right behind me. I can feel breath in my neck, yet they're right in front of me. Richard? I see you. Are you okay? They're all over the place. New ones come. There's a hanging woman. There's a tall demon. Get away when you see them. Don't look at them, Richard. They don't fear normal darkness. Get away from their channels. I think the clock is approaching midnight, or is it past midnight already? What about you, the person behind the keyboard? Are you alright?
Huh. So he literally breaks the fourth wall, not only referring to someone named Richard, but flat out talking to us, the player. This won't be the only time this happens, as the next night has another great sequence. We begin the night, switch to the news channel, only to be greeted with nothing. Joe is gone, and we are left with dead silence. Until... apparently our game crashed again. At least it had the courtesy to warn us this time. But whatever option we click, we get this.
Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. Wake up.
This will repeat non-stop until we do what it asks.
Wake up.
After we click load game on this bizarro title screen, the night properly begins. Still no news report though. I guess the entities got to Joe. But seriously though, night 3 and night 5 have some of the best sequences in the entire series. It's the fact that it breaks the fourth wall, crashing the game, affecting the title screen, pretending it crashed only to have this creepy voice just whispering in your ear. It's all just so good. I usually find fourth wall breaks and meta jokes to be kind of hit or miss. Often they come across as kind of petty and condescending, or they ruin the immersion of the world. Sometimes it can be even confusing on how much information a character actually knows, making some of the plot feel a little muddy. However, I feel like breaking the fourth wall in horror media is always a treat. Yeah, there's your Scream meta-awareness where they reference horror tropes, but psychological horror is another subgenre that this game definitely takes the most after. Like Scarecrow's fake-out game crash, the entirety of Eternal Darkness with the sanity effects, including more fake-out game crashes. More recently, Nixon, ironically enough, also added a fake game crash in his Joy of Creation demo. I'm sure you've realized by now how common it is to add fake game crashes in horror games. Probably because it's every player's worst nightmare. This game does it very well though. Mainly because out of all things to expect from FNAF 4, fourth wall breaks and psychological horror stuff was likely not on anyone's bingo card. Again, the vibe of this game is just immaculate. I know it seems like the glazing is insane, but I feel like this deserves it. Andy wanted to nail stuff like the atmosphere, and he accomplished that, I'd say. Anyways, back on track. Night 5 includes the final character I have yet to discuss, Nightmare Wario. He occasionally appears on the left side of the screen, and all you have to do is click that Stop Demon W button I talked about earlier. If you don't, well, you die. He is an oddball, because there's no explanation why a second version of Wario exists alongside the regular one that's still present, or why he's referred to as both a nightmare and a demon. Oh well, maybe the answer lies within some future installment. Am I right? Upon beating Night 5, we get the extras menu. We get our usual stuff like the characters, a plug for the last 4 games, and a list of names. The 2 points of interest for us though are Night 6 and Quest Mode. Unfortunately, I couldn't play these myself because of a bug involving the save data. I beat Night 5 and showed off the extras menu as you just saw, but when booting the game back up the next day, it was gone. This was a common bug that I believe other YouTubers brought up in their own videos back then, and I guess it never got patched. I didn't want to replay Night 5 again, so thanks to this third-party footage, you can see them in action. Night 6 isn't a game changer really, just a harder Night 5, but the cutscene you get upon completion is definitely worth listening to.
Oh, these nightmares! I don't know why I keep having them. Possibly because of what I saw in the factory, but yet these dreams seem so real. Anyway, I better get going. My new job as the assistant at WarioWare Inc. starts today.
Yep, you heard that right. Dawko reprises his role as Richard McRoy. We already knew this game took place within a nightmare, but now we know it was his nightmare. He likely also caught that he mentioned working at WarioWare, placing this game between 1 and 2. But what was with all the other psychological stuff involving the game crashing? Also, how did Wario attack him if he woke up? Is this like Inception, where it's a dream within a dream? Probably shouldn't think about it too hard. It is a cool reveal after all. Now, the last thing to note for this chapter is quest mode. It doesn't add anything lore-wise, but the series of puzzles it has are pretty neat. Fun fact, this was originally planned for Origins before that fell through. Pretty interesting, right? And there you have it. FNAW 4 is wrapped up in time for the holiday season, and with it, we have also concluded the original saga of the FNAW story. All the 1.0 versions of the games are now done, and next time we will be looking at the updates that came out in 2020. Let me tell you, it is gonna get bonkers. I guess I should also wrap up my thoughts on 4 as well. What else can I say? I like this one. Quite a bit, honestly. I like the psychological bits added to it, I like the ambiance with the strange noises playing throughout the night, I like the jump scares, the theme song which is one of the best renditions of the track, and the overall uniqueness of it being set within a TV screen. It really stands out from the rest in all the right ways. Just nearly everything about this game I enjoy. My only gripes with it is that extras bug. Otherwise, a very solid entry that is an easy S tier for me if I ever ranked fan games. That's all my thoughts out of the way though. So, thank you all so much for watching. Shoutouts to my buddy Super Discoball 7 for making that small cameo at the beginning. And I'll see you all in my next video. Take care.